You know how with the change of every season at Dollar Tree, they get new wooden cutouts? So things like hearts for Valentine's Day and snowmen for winter and stars for 4th of July. You ever look at those and go, what do I do with these? I don't have the talent to paint them. And soon you'll find out that I don't either. But don't click away yet, because I do have some ideas that you could use to bring these DIY cutouts to life. Welcome to Create Craft Costume, where we think crafting or creating is as close to magic as we're gonna get. My name is Ashley, and last year I started this channel by making Harry Potter holiday signs. I give these to my friend so that she can hang them for every holiday of the year, and I haven't finished every season yet. So this is going to specifically be for after Christmas, but in between Valentine's Day. We are going to be using these Dollar Tree winter cutouts, and we're going to give them a little bit of a Harry Potter flair, but don't worry, you can use these with any theme that you would like. If that's what you're interested in, let's get started. So the first step is we are going to be painting the edges of these with whatever color that you're going to hide the wood. I'm going to be finishing off these edges before we get to decorating the main piece. But I know that where this is going in my friend's house, people walk by it from the side all the time. And I got lazy for one of the projects and decided that I wasn't going to paint the back or the edges, and I hate how that one looks when you are coming out of her office. And as you can tell on camera, there is a definite difference between this painted side and this side. So you just decide what's right for you. Now, does this have to be the perfect paint job? Absolutely not, because this is the back. I just want it to look finished if people happen to catch a glimpse of it. But now you may be asking yourself some questions. What do you mean that the painted part is the back? Yep, I am not making any mistakes, and for the front, we are going to decorate it with fabric. Now, full disclosure, I did get inspired by Kelly Barlow Creations, and I will link her video down below. However, I really wanted to put my own spin on it and try it for myself. Now, some words of advice. This just came from my fabric stash, but as you can see, it does have folds in it. We are going to be using Mod Podge to apply this, and no amount of Mod Podge is going to get the folds out. So please, please, please make sure that you iron this. Yes, Cheryl, you have inspired me. Iron this before you cut it out, because these wrinkles will be permanent if you leave them that way. And if you are new to this channel and do not know who Cheryl is, please make sure to check out some of our sewing tutorials, as she is the second half of Create Craft Costume. And now it's time to actually apply it. I am choosing to use Mod Podge. And at this point, you may be wondering, what is the difference between regular Mod Podge and fabric Mod Podge? And if you're not, I hope you're wondering it now. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. So Kelly Barlow, she used regular Mod Podge and it seemed to work just fine. But because I have fabric Mod Podge, I just want to see if there's any difference. So since I am making two of them, I will be using one regular and one fabric Mod Podge and compare the two. In order for me to remember which one is which, I'm just going to make a couple of metallic dots on the back of the one that I am using the fabric Mod Podge on. And we can see if their results differ at all. Now I have a fully protected work surface, and I'm taking the fabric Mod Podge, and we are going to apply a very generous coat. And something you might be able to see, the fabric Mod Podge is definitely thick. It definitely has that thick paste texture. And I tend to be skimpy on the edges, so I want to make sure that I'm getting enough there. Just as a spoiler warning, I did have at least one corner pull up on both of my trees. So do make sure that you are paying attention to the edges of your project. Now, once your first layer of Mod Podge is down, you can begin to apply the fabric. This may take some trial and error. My goal was to make the Deathly Hallows go down the middle of the project, and so I had to remove and reapply several times. Make sure that you're checking with your fingers that you like where the fabric is placed, and then we are going to apply another layer of Mod Podge on top. This tool is not required, but I am using a brayer to roll out the fabric as flat as possible. Here you will see me applying another coat of Mod Podge to the top. Remember, this is with the fabric Mod Podge. One of the main reasons I'm applying another coat on top is because I saw Kelly Barlow do that in her same video. However, if you read the side of the instructions, it does actually say that you should apply it to the back of the fabric before you put the fabric on your project. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because I have since done some research and learned that fabric Mod Podge is really supposed to be more used for fabric on fabric projects. And so I did get a slight bubble. I also had a harder time getting it to adhere to the wooden corners. That's not to say that this one didn't turn out, but it has a very different feel and it has a very different look than the project with the regular Mod Podge. So I do say if you're going to put fabric on wood, I don't really see much of a difference. And in fact, I would probably prefer the regular Mod Podge just based on it adhering better to the project. This is the fabric Mod Podge. This is the regular Mod Podge. So you can definitely tell that there is a viscosity difference. However, we're gonna see how they handle after they dry. But because it's winter, so I don't mind heating my house, I'm going to try Kelly Barlow's suggestion of putting this in the oven on the lowest setting for about 20 to 25 minutes. And here is what they look like just out of the oven. The one on the left, as you can see, is the fabric Mod Podge, and the one on the right is the regular formula Mod Podge. There were some things that I definitely preferred about both, but I would say that the finish with the regular Mod Podge was a lot more even. You also saw less brush strokes. The one with the fabric Mod Podge looked almost a little more wet to me, and as you can see in some of the clips, like I said, it didn't quite adhere on the corners as well. But as previously mentioned, I did find out that fabric Mod Podge is supposed to be used to apply fabric to fabric. With that being said, when you are cutting both of these out with a X-Acto knife, the fabric Mod Podge made the fabric very, very stiff. I did have a recognizable difference when cutting through that fabric versus the regular Mod Podge. So that is something to consider. In order to help even out these finishes, I just came back with another matte coat and I put that on top of both of these and put them back in the oven. That way I could hopefully have less brush strokes, a stronger finish, and I always prefer matte over gloss anyway. Once you have your matte top coat on, some tips are you're going to want to make sure that you take the brush from top to bottom, because then if your brush strokes show, you don't have that stop in the middle of the piece that I didn't like about the first one. Another tip is make sure that you get it all the way to the corners, because we're going to be trimming this off. So it's better to have it adhered and make sure it's adhered than to miss any spots. You also probably don't need quite as much as this, but I realized as I was putting it on, the fabric is no longer absorbing any of the Mod Podge. So you could probably start with a thinner layer, and this just does not have that thickness and the viscosity of the fabric Mod Podge. So it goes on very, very evenly, and I hope this will give us a really nice, smooth top coat. And now here's what they look like out of the oven after about 20 minutes. As you can tell, they have slightly different sheens. And this shot is actually the opposite. The right was the one that was started with the fabric Mod Podge, and the left is the one that was the regular formula Mod Podge, but has both gloss and the matte finish on it. On to the satisfying part of actually cutting it out. Well, it is satisfying, except when you watch Kelly Barlow do it and seems like it's so easy, and then you watch you do it and you feel like a kindergartner. So here are some tips from a newbie, since this was my first time trying this. 1, do make sure that you have a sharp blade. I made the mistake of letting it get dull on the next cutout, and the fabric did fray, and it just does not look as good. And take your time, particularly on the curve portions, because I just didn't feel like I was hitting those very well at first. So there is a learning curve, literally, and take your time and patience as you need to. But if you applied the Mod Podge correctly, you should not have a problem getting the fabric to cut and pull away from the item. And then here it is. Ta-da! And now it is finally time for the embellishments. I'm going to add a trunk with this folk art acrylic bark brown paint, but of course you can use any brown paint that you have on hand. Now my goal for this set of signs is a winter January theme, so I want this tree to look like something that you would come across in a snow-covered forest. So in order to add this snow, I'm going to take this 3D puffy paint and enhance it on the corners. Yes, you heard that right. I did say puffy paint. That's stuff that you probably haven't played with since maybe the 90s. But I saw this on Kelly's video and I thought it was genius. And you'll see why as you start to use it and that as it dries. Here's what I like about the puffy paint. You get this really nice texture. So instead of just a flat painted surface, you get raises and bumps and things that can actually look like snow. Now, as with any creation, you're going to play with this until you like it. You might want to draw some lines if you are scared to just freehand, but puffy paint is pretty forgiving, particularly if you are trying to make things look organic, like snow. Now, I let this dry overnight, so I'm not sure how long you need to let it sit before it can be handled, but once it is dry, it does give those raises and bumps, and it looks like snow. You will also see that although I say the next step is my last, I did end up adding some glitter on top of this because it makes a great adhesive as well. I'm going to finish this with one more touch. I'm going to use this Artesia 3D fabric paint, and I'm just going to highlight one of these Deathly Hallows right in the middle. It's one of the reasons I was so particular in how I lined up this fabric. I just want to really emphasize the subtle Harry Potter reference, if that makes sense. And now we let this dry. Now that the trees are done and drying, we are going to move on to the snowmen. So far, we have painted the sides of them white. I purposely did not paint the back because we are going to be adhering this to a different Dollar Tree sign. But first, we've got to decorate the snowman itself. Now, the first step of this embellishment, I'm going to be using the exact same fabric technique that I did on the trees. So I'm going to place a layer of Mod Podge down, place fabric on top, and then do another layer of Mod Podge. And this time around, I just used Kelly Barlow's original plan of the regular Mod Podge formula and placing it in the oven. Then I took a X-Acto knife and cut around it. Again, you will see where some of the fabric frayed because I was not making sure it was sharp. So if it is dull, you will make your life harder. Now, if this next step also feels a little bit repetitive, it's because I already have the tools, so why not use them? Plus, we want the signs to coordinate, right? So I'm going to take the 3D Puffy paint again, and I'm going to paint his body and his face, completely cover it with the white 3D Puffy paint, and set it aside to dry before we continue. And there are two reasons that I prefer the puffy paint for this project rather than just painting it white. And one is I can come in and kind of fix these edges or make them look a little bit cleaner. But the other reason is this puffy paint not only has dimension, it's going to look different than the white paint that is going to be on the background of the jars. So this is a way for it to stand out not only as a 3D, but also color element. To finish off the snowman, we have to add a few more accessories. And I'm going to take these acrylic jewels and turn them into our coal. I'm just going to take some black paint and I'm going to paint over a lot of these jewels. I'm going to be using this for the eyes, the mouth, and probably some buttons along the way. And of course, a faster way would be to spray paint these. However, it is too cold where I live to be able to do that at the moment. Now, because this is craft paint, you are probably going to have to do 1 to 2 coats. I am also going to seal this with a Mod Podge to help make sure it doesn't flake. But one of the things I particularly like about this set from the Dollar Tree is that it has multiple different sizes. So I'm making sure to paint a lot of every size because I will be using each size differently. And if the last shot made you panic because you saw that there was trim, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging. It just fit better in the editing process. Now I'm going to show you how I used black yarn to make the trim instead of just regular paint. And again, this goes back to my love of texture. The yarn will look different than the puffy paint since I've already used the puffy paint for snow. Now, I'm deciding to use glue for this, and by glue, I specifically mean not hot glue. I want to be able to move and touch and manipulate this yarn as much as I need to fill in the gaps. So I'm going to use Aleene's Tacky Glue. You can just get that at the Dollar Tree as well. And I'm going to draw one line and fold the yarn back and forth. Yes, I did say fold. I want as few cuts in this yarn as possible because the less cuts I have, the less chance it has of fraying. So I'm going to cover the end in a lot of glue, start it, draw my line, and then build the yarn on top of it. And I'm going to do that until I continue to the end. Once you get to the end, you're going to make one final cut on your yarn, and you are going to tuck it into the sides right here. Then for the pom-pom, instead of going in a back and forth motion, I'm starting just with a spiral and wrapping it around as many times as I need to. Again, with making only one cut at the end. So there's only one fray at the beginning and one fray at the end of the yarn. For some finishing touch-ups, I'm just going to take some of the same black paint that we used on the gems, and I'm going to fill in any spaces that I feel like will make this look more complete or more finished. Now, of course, you could paint this beforehand. I'm going to be honest, I was just impatient and I didn't want to wait for it to dry. So I'm going to paint it after the fact and let it blend in with the glue. Now we're going to prep our jar. I'm going to be putting the snowman decal onto this jar, and it is a little bit too large with this overhang. Instead, I'm going to flip this onto the back. I'm going to paint this in the Waverly Chalk plaster because this is not a pure white, so the snowman will still pop out on top of this. But one tip that I will give you is I am going with the shape of the jar. This is one of those few times that I actually do like the brush strokes showing, and I want it to take the shape of the jar so that we get that snow globe effect with the snowman. Now we are on our last finishing touches. Here I added some highlights with some metallic Artesia paint just to give the jar a little bit more dimension. I also took the front piece burlap topper and cut it down so that it would fit on the back. And then the very last things that I have to do is make sure that we can hang all of them. And I have this pom-pom that I want to try out. I did get this from the Dollar Tree, and I think it would just make a cute, unique little topper. And if it doesn't hold, I can replace it later, but I don't see a lot of stretch from this. So we're gonna glue this onto the back, and then our Dollar Tree winter cutout Harry Potter project is complete.
Oh, wait, whoa, time out. Wait a minute. Before I show you the awesome reveal photos, I've got to talk about a major fail beforehand. Now, the reason for the jar of the snowman is I always have two signs that balance each other out on either side of the display. However, this sign just did not turn out. I really wanted to make a sign showing Hermione's blue bell flames that she carries around in jars in the books. You don't see that in the movies, but in the books she does for winter. And I tried a couple different methods, and I was determined on painting it, and a painter I am not. I dabble in it. I really wanted this to work out, and it just didn't. However, when I was talking with my friend, she gave some really good ideas on how I could improve this later, because I just do not like how this turned out. But due to time constraints and wanting to have the display be symmetrical, I am still showing it in the final shots. So I didn't want you to go, why is that there? But please stay tuned and subscribe to my channel, because I will be improving that sign later in the future. And now, here's the final reveal. And here they are hanging in her living room. And she is particularly fond of snowmen, so I'm quite proud of that one. However, I also really like the subtle forest nod of the tree. But let me know what you guys think. What is your favorite? Please tell me in the comments down below. Or how would you change these up? And as mentioned, the fire one will be changing in the future, so please make sure to subscribe to my channel and follow on any social media outlets so that you know when that has been done. And I will see you in our next video. Thanks. Bye.